The Taming of Coyote, Chapter 24. Coyote sat over the old grave. He lowered his head so far that his muzzle was nearly buried in his chest fur. "You really loved him, didn't you?" Sonia asked. "I loved him very much, Sonia. Life out here is enchanting for only so long to an immortal. Soon even the most amazing of natural miracles become humdrum. Before humans, it was the otherkin. It was the fairies, spirits, and mythical creatures. Then came humanity. Every so many years, a human being would catch our interest. We made legends out of them. Some good, some bad. Avery was one of them, and it was very good." "And Lorraine?" Sonia asked. "And you," Coyote added. "Me?" she gasped. "You are a very special human, too. Perhaps it is genetic. Perhaps it is just fate. Perhaps it is even reincarnation. Sonia Turn. I could never live up to Avery, Coyote, and I don't think I could ever mean as much to you as Lorraine." "Huh," he smirked. "That is so like your ancestors before you. You are too modest." Sonia felt her cheeks grow hot, and she blushed. She then let out a soft laugh. "Aren't I a bit young for your admiration?" That seemed to catch him by surprise. "Aren't you a bit young to think of such a thing?" He gave a chuckle. "You won't be a little girl forever, Sonia. You will find that, in the end, the years fly by. Now is a good time to start filling them with meaning." "And what will you do?" "Live on," he sighed. "I'll figure out the specifics when the time comes." "So, what of Lorraine?" Coyote seemed to stare off into nowhere as he narrowed his eyes. "That is the betrayal of Turn. My own kindness was my downfall. So blinded by the kindness humans had shown, I had forgotten that they are capable of evil too." "Tell me what happened, Coyote," Sonia pleaded gently. "What made Turn so lifeless?" It wasn't long after the passing of Turn's beloved Avery. It had only been a few weeks. A small group of strangers had come upon the village. They were a strange lot indeed. They came upon horses and dressed in the finest of linens. Whatever place from which they had come must have been large and extravagant. They immediately perked the curiosity of the villagers. In truth, Coyote was intrigued too. Not since his great battle beside Avery had he seen people like this. A man named Ravyn Oliver Grundle led the group. In some ways he reminded Coyote of a bird. He had such scrawny and spindly arms and legs. His body was thin and long, but hidden under grand blue robes. He had a nose like a toucan's beak. Such an odd man he was. It was no wonder everyone watched him with great intrigue. Ravyn Grundle was a very dry and serious man. He rarely laughed. From the moment of his arrival, he spoke of such strange things that were foreign and queer upon the ears of Turn. He spoke of angels and of God. It was not like previous beliefs Coyote had heard of, and none that Turn was familiar with. He spoke of not a God with a name, but of one God who simply was God. Turn found it a bit strange and an odd concept to swallow. After all, they had spent generations worshipping nature and spirits, creating peace and harmony between humankind and the wilderness that held them at its mercy. Could one God be so powerful? Could this demigod, this Jesus Christ, be so grand? The stories that Ravyn Grundle would tell them were intriguing and indeed grand. All would gather about to hear them. They were so new and so interesting. Not an ear in Turn could be covered. Even Coyote would come to listen. Ravyn Grundle's presence, though a bit off, seemed to be a pleasure at first. However, not everyone was so taken with these new and refreshing ideas. Some were not so easily charmed by Ravyn Grundle's nature. Lorraine sat in a rocking chair as she manipulated its movements with her toes. She was knitting within it. She had quite a ball of a belly under a blue gown. It was a little awkward for her frame. I wish there was some way to tell if it was going to be a boy or a girl. I'm sorry, Coyote replied with a chuckle. Take heart. In another 4 months, you can see for yourself. Miss Layla Crump thinks we should have Reverend Grundle baptize him at the new church they are building. Miss Crump is a nosy old busybody, he muttered. So you object? It doesn't matter to me, he admitted. Only do it if you want to. Religion is but a collection of tales to me. It's far more to human beings. It won't hurt my feelings if you choose to convert, nor will it hurt my feelings if you remain with the old ways. Follow your heart, Lorraine, and not the mob mentality. Everyone seems to be converting, Lorraine sighed. It's creepy. Does it bother you that much? I don't know, she said. Reverend Grundle says such strange things. It frightens me. I was never frightened with the old ways. I mean, they're interesting things to hear. Or were. But he seems to be growing so intense and forceful. I feel like we are being herded towards something, and it's not towards spiritual peace. He has convinced everyone that we are living in sin, this terrible horror story of this hell he speaks of. Can it be true? If that is so, then what of our ancestors and their afterlives? Are they in this hell place? I cannot say, Coyote replied. I do not believe so. I do not believe in heaven or hell, as Reverend Grundle speaks of it. You must remember that I live in a world of simplicity. I know what I've seen. I know there are things bigger than human beings, and they can influence the things human beings do. But as human beings become more and more civilized and advanced, leaving further behind their primitive beginnings, their beliefs become more complex as well. I have heard so many over the centuries. I will likely hear many more in the centuries to come. I agree that there is something off about Reverend Grundle, but my personal discomfort is not enough to deprive what makes everyone feel happy. Lorraine set her knitting in her lap and sighed with a frown. I'm uncomfortable. Do you need me to rub something? He asked. No, it's not that kind of discomfort. It's how everyone is acting. With the old ways, everyone was able to have some sort of personal interaction or peace. Ever since this new religion, it seems the only person who ever enjoys this God is Reverend Grundle. The people never enjoy him, for they're too busy being huddled together beneath Reverend Grundle. He's like this big dark cloud that blocks out this grand spiritual heaven that he keeps talking about. On top of that, everyone is turning to him for guidance. What does that mean for you? I'm no fool, Lorraine. I have nothing against the holy man. So long as he is just and fair, I don't care. If the village decides that he is the best person to lead them, I can only step down and respect that. The welfare of Tern is what is at the heart for me. But I don't feel that it is necessary to use fear tactics. If he leads Tern astray with lies and corruption, uses this new religion for his own personal gain, then I shall have something to say about it. The further along the pregnancy went, the less coordination remained. Lorraine, at 5 months, found great difficulty in trying to fasten her dress. She panted and grunted as she turned about. It was no use. She'd never be able to contort into the necessary position. However, Coyote came up behind her to relieve her of the task. Why this dress? He asked. It's my best one, she replied. Why are you dressing so nice? You don't have to get dolled up for me. Oh, listen to you, Lorraine scolded. Still, she had to laugh. Coyote always tried to be silly. I'm going to the square. Everyone is going to be there. What for? He asked. I'm not sure. Everyone is dressing up nice and going to the square to listen to Reverend Grundle spout some kind of mumbo-jumbo. You know how he is. Why don't you come along with me? I'll pass, he replied. You know very well tonight is the hunting night. If we want supper, I have to catch it. But you go on ahead. You can tell me about it later. Lorraine made a face. She had hoped that he would break his routine to go with her. She didn't really want to go by herself, but she had already promised to go. At this point, she couldn't even fake feeling ill. Everyone would come to bother her when she didn't arrive. She was trapped. She would have to endure the discomfort that washed over her as Reverend Grundle would cast disapproving eyes upon her, and yet say nothing directly to her. He had such cold eyes, and always for her. Why? "You made it!" Miss Layla Clump cheered as she shuffled towards Lorraine. "Oh, my dear, you look simply radiant!" Tolerating the inevitable tummy tap, she forced a smile. "Thank you. I don't always feel radiant." "Didn't Coyote come with you?" "He chose to stick to his routine," Lorraine shrugged. "He's hunting with the pack." A faint howl came from the woods as if to verify her words. "Oh, that is such a shame," came a masculine voice. It was Reverend Grundle, fingers pressed together as he came upon them. "It's a real pity that Coyote couldn't break from his ritual this one time to attend." "Well, in my condition, regular hunting and full bellies are very important," Lorraine defended, though under the sugar-coating of a smile and a fake giggle. "Especially yours," Miss Crump giggled. "Yes," Reverend Grundle said dryly. "It must be interesting being a mortal wife to a pagan coyote god." For some reason, Lorraine felt herself growing pale and clammy. It was almost as if he was trying to instill a sense of guilt into her. "I suppose. He's powerful, but I wouldn't consider him a god." "Ha!" he chuckled with amusement. "Given my position, dear Lorraine, neither would I." With that, Reverend Grundle turned up his nose at the ladies and proceeded to the scaffold. The crowd of Turnians silenced as he raised his hands. "My friends, thank you all for coming. You are doing a fine job on the new church. You show a great sense of pride in all that you do. Turn has a very promising Christian future. God smiles down on you." That fueled applause from the villagers. Reverend Grundle's eyes fell on Lorraine. Indeed, he could say and do as he pleased so long as she didn't try to start any trouble. If she were unhappy with him, she'd convince her inhuman husband to take a stand. He knew very well that Coyote and Lorraine were in the way of his total command of Turn. His religious blabber, real and fake alike, would only go so far. No matter. The time was soon approaching when it would no longer be an issue. He raised his hands once more and brought the village to a silence. "However, there are still obstacles that prevent you from being completely graced by the Lord. You see, God is a generous God, but God is also a jealous God. In order to receive his true love, you must abandon your old ways altogether. You were ignorant before, and he shall forgive you. But now you must know that the old ways are the devil's ways. They are wrong and heathen practices." A wave of gasps came over the village. They certainly never expected anything like that. Lorraine felt her cheeks grow hot. "Now just wait a minute!" All eyes fell on her. "How dare you show up in Turn? My turn! Coyote's turn! And just take it upon yourself to order everyone about. My great-grandfather founded this village. His ways have always brought us great blessings. It's not a worship of the old out there, but a constant gratitude for how generous it was. Our blessings can be faced, unlike this God that you go on about. We never see any existence of it." "My dear, emotional Lorraine, times change. You folks simply didn't know any better. Satan uses that ignorance against humans, and he even takes credit for the work of God, so that worship can be falsely placed. He uses fancy magic to keep people hooked like fish. He keeps people away from God by using fun and lies. You get to run your mouth, and you got your church. What more do you want?" Lorraine demanded. "I want to purify Turn. I want to save it from hell. I cannot let you all go to hell. You are such good people." Lorraine didn't buy it. There was more up his sleeve than he dared admit, and she knew it. It wasn't so much the religion that she disliked. Like Coyote, she understood that religions change. However, Reverend Grundle seemed to have an answer for everything, and he sounded as if he made it up if he could not validate it in Scripture. Not to mention, no one was allowed to read the Scripture but him. No one would ever know God like Reverend Grundle, and it was through him that the people knew God. Something about that sounded fishy. Reverend Grundle had a strange attitude, and it was very standoffish when it came to her or Coyote. It really irked her. Coyote may not have cared, but she did. "Come up here," he offered. "Do come where all can see you." Lorraine suddenly wished that she had just held her tongue. Well, there was no turning back now. With a hard swallow and a bold inhale, she did her best to march to the scaffold. A pair of men helped her up the stairs, and Reverend Grundle took her hand to lead her to his side. "You don't see it. Or perhaps you do not want to see it," he said. "I have heard your story, and my heart goes out to you. That woodland devil seduced you with black magic. After he had you, you saw him for what he was. Soon, when you realized there was no escape, you simply gave up and accepted your defeat. But you don't have to be bound to that coyote demon any more. You can choose a new husband, who is as he appears." "Coyote was testing me," Lorraine insisted. "Everything is not how it appears. It's what is on the inside that counts. Coyote is a wonderful man. But he is not a man. He is an animal, and he is inhuman. He's a thing. Break free of him and purify yourself of his poison. Learn what kind of wonderful and liberating life you can live with God." "I do not need to leave my husband in order to appreciate any God. If that is the case, then you practice a false religion that tells a wife to leave her husband for something stupid." "You do not understand," Reverend Grundle shouted. "He is a devil. He will destroy you. Once he realizes that Christianity will not tolerate his hold on this village, he will attack with full force on the villagers to punish them. He will use fear to hold you all to him, as he has done for generations. You must learn to know better. He has brainwashed you. Your ancestors' ignorance may have been fine when the village was founded, but now God can make it more. Cast out Coyote. Cast out the devil and his woodland servants." "Stop it!" Lorraine shouted as she covered her ears. "It's not true! It's not true! I love him!" "You only think you love him," Reverend Grundle insisted. "You are under a spell. He has bewitched you. Cast him out and see the truth. If you turned on him, he would kill you without a thought. Do it before it's too late." "No!" she spat. "My child deserves a father. His father. Coyote loves us. He loves me. He loves our baby." "You are infected, Lorraine," the preacher gasped. "His power and his seed are blinding you. People have turned. Do you see how strong and cunning the devil is? He has worked hard to keep her from the light. Her life is condemned to be as dark as the woods that surround this village." "It's a lie!" Lorraine spat. She let out a yelp when Reverend Grundle grabbed her wrist. "Your life is a lie, Lorraine. I will give you one last chance to repent. Become an example to your people and save them from the darkness. Become saved and bring good fortune to the name of Turn, or you will suffer an eternity in hell. Let go! Cast out her husband. Purify Turn. Then when his seed is birthed from your body, we shall sacrifice it. It has devil blood, and it will grow to be evil." "No! I'm not going to kill my baby! Coyote! Coyote!" she cried out as she tried to free herself from the preacher's grip. Out in the woods, the pack was spread over a vast amount of land. Being so large meant they could hunt over more ground in far less time. However, there was no trail yet. Suddenly, ears all around began to go erect, and heads flew to attention. Their senses were highly alert. Yips and barks came in waves to communicate along the pack. Coyotes that were closer to the village took it upon themselves to abandon the hunt, turn and race towards Tern. Coyote tensed. Ravyn was in trouble. He snarled as the fur on the back of his neck bristled and his hackles locked. He spun around and took one bound. A loud snap echoed as leaves and debris flew from the hidden bear trap. He flipped over and landed face first in the dirt with a high-pitched yelp. A bear trap? What in the... He had been set up! Those strangers had taken advantage of him and set him up! The coyotes close to him rushed to his side and began to fuss about the trap. Time was being wasted. In turn, Reverend Grundle pulled Lorraine to a pole. His assistants held her and tied her fast. Not a soul moved. They were absolutely shocked. Somehow, they knew this wasn't right. But hell! This hell that Reverend Grundle spoke of, it sounded so terrifying. What if he was right? Snarls and vicious barks started to travel through the crowd. 2 coyotes leapt onto the scaffold and bared their teeth. "Do you see? Do you see?" Reverend Grundle shouted as he pointed to the coyotes. "Satan has gotten wind that he is not welcome in Tern any longer. Now he is sending threats." "Where's Coyote?" Lorraine cried to the 2 snarling beasts. The 2 assistants picked up a set of boards in an attempt to ward them off. Reverend Grundle narrowed his eyes and snatched up a torch. "Hold them off! It's time this came to an end." With that, he threw the torch at the kindling at Lorraine's feet. Screams rose throughout Tern as the smoke rose. "No!" Lorraine pleaded, tears now streaming from her eyes. The coyotes tried again and again to reach her. Again and again they were forced back by Reverend Grundle's assistants. "Hurry!" Coyote growled as he tried to chew on the trap. His head rose as the others continued to free him. He gasped as he noticed the smoke. That smell. Oh, what a terrifying scent! He spun his head back around, and he was prepared to bite off his own paw. However, the hard work of multiple intelligent coyotes paid off, and they were able to pry the trap open enough for him to remove his paw. He forced the pain to the back of his mind and forced himself to his feet. With battle howls from the pack, Coyote led his small coyote army back to Tern. The closer they came, the more horrid the smell. The screams! The villagers couldn't even watch anymore. They scattered as the pack leapt through and over the fence and bolted for the scaffold. "Woodland devils!" Reverend Grundle cried out. "Your hold on this village is over! Over! People of Tern, do you see the truth now? Your precious coyote is trying to prevent you from experiencing the grace of God. Take up arms and slaughter the demons! God is with you! God is your strength! Destroy them if you value your souls!" Reverend Grundle had planned it so perfectly. Everything happened just as he had hoped it would. True, it cost a life. Perhaps it would cost a few more. But in the end, the result was the same. With Coyote gone, there was no one to be wary of. Tern would be his to lead as he pleased. God conveniently gave him this village to conquer and command. That was how he saw it, and none of those backwoods know-nothings knew any better. A sense of superstition had always lingered over Tern, and it was so even now. The villagers feared so much for their souls that their simple logic was overruled. It appeared as though the holy man was right, despite the logical explanation that could have been applied. When Reverend Grundle declared Tern should worship his god, Coyote attacked. So to save their souls, they took up anything that they could use as a weapon. The coyotes, though they were above the average, were brought down by the very people they once vowed to protect. "Retreat, devils!" the preacher cried out. "Retreat to the depths of hell, or be smote under the hand of God! You are powerless here!" A snarl sent a chill up Reverend Grundle's back. Slowly he turned around to see Coyote himself. Lorraine was gone. He had come too late, and he could do nothing to save her. All there was to do was to use his rage, his anger, and his pain, and fuel his focus on this man. "Coyote!" Oh, that grin was so wicked. "This village is no longer yours." "Tern is on my land," he snarled. "This is God's land. Tern has no use for pagan shapeshifters and savage tribe trickster spirits. They have God now. Your God scowls upon you, Grundle. Does he demand the sacrifice of pregnant women? Of ignorant innocents? That makes you more of a savage than Tern, nature, or me. You killed my wife and child. You tortured her, made her suffer. You used her to strike fear into the people of Tern and blind them. I will never forgive you for destroying everything. Ravyn Grundle let out a chuckle. Come then, woodland devil. Teach me a lesson. Just try to use your black magic on me. Or will you face me fair and square? Either way, I dare you. Every strand of fur on Coyote's body bristled until it stood on end, and his lips curled back as far as possible. In an instant he lunged forward. Ravyn Grundle was prepared. Blinded by his despair, Coyote was not as cautious as he should have been. Out came a sword from under the long robes, and an attack was made. Coyote was taken by surprise, but was unharmed, and quickly recovered from the incident. You sneaky bastard! Shows what you know, demonic cur! My parents were married! Come at me again! God will work through me to vanquish you! Coyote was furious, even though he knew very well now that he was being baited. He just couldn't ignore the overwhelming rage and instinct to avenge his loss. So the battle commenced. It was difficult for Coyote to land a successful strike. Ravyn Grundle was quite skilled. Coyote sorely underestimated him. He lunged again. This time, Ravyn Grundle nailed him in the head with the hilt. Down he went. Before he could raise himself, Ravyn Grundle slammed his foot down on Coyote's back and brought down his blade. There was a stillness, a silence. It seemed that everything had stopped, and time stood still. All eyes, human and canine alike, focused on the scaffold. Blood pooled beneath and around Coyote's body as he lay still. I told you, you miserable cur. God is with me. Look, Coyote panted, weakening quickly. Your God has nothing to do with this. I underestimated you. It is a mistake I will not make again. No, you won't. Goodbye, Coyote. It has been an absolute pleasure defeating you. A twist of the blade, and it was all over. The Coyotes hesitated only a moment before making a hasty retreat. Lorraine was gone. Coyote was gone. There was nothing more that could be done for them, and there was no reason to remain in the village. Tern had been successfully usurped.